I mean, I think that's just it. I think that every actor wants to play a character who has multitudes within them and is made up of good and bad and everything in between. And I think it was an easy yes for me in many ways. I mean, there's obviously the dauntingness of entering a big world that people are already huge fans of. But apart from that, like, the character himself was just like an easy yes. I was like, I can't think of a more interesting character study or psychological study. So yeah, I mean, delving into a character who you don't understand, that's like an actor's kind of dream, you know? Yeah, I read this book, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I still haven't read the original books, and actually, I was a massive fan of the original films, but had never read the books. And so I decided to wait because it all happens later, and I didn't want to get ahead of myself psychologically in the character's kind of path, I guess. I didn't want to know what happens next. I wanted to be fresh. I also think there's an element of, like, when you're playing someone who eventually you know is going to become a bad guy, and a pretty bad guy, you don't want to judge them too soon, because if I start judging the character, then I can't really empathize with him and get into his shoes and get into his body. So yeah, I read the book in depth, did a lot of kind of like asking myself why he would do what he does, and I did a lot of research on like past dictators and what they were like when they were younger, and tried to humanize him as much as possible.
Basically exactly that. I mean, it was... I know this is so terrible. It came up
I'm just
in
laughing at you
another-
like smirking as the question is being asked.
Because this is something that we had talked about before, where anytime something really sad was happening, like inside, I was like, yeah, this is gonna make everybody cry. This is gonna be great. But no, I mean, I really enjoyed his. It was such an amazing setup, a character like him, and his function as, I don't want to say archetype, but his function as kind of a moral compass, or as like a big heart, as somebody who, I think the average audience member could empathize with. And, he's like the one guy in the Capitol who's like, this is not it. This is not good or normal, and we shouldn't treat it like it is. And, yeah, I mean, there was such a... I had so much admiration for him. It was a lot of fun to play him, and it was a lot of fun to kind of just be constantly at odds with everybody else at all times, and have this kind of relationship with Corio that was, I think, fundamentally rooted in a trust and like a want for him to explore his potential as a good person, but it, obviously takes a lot of twists and turns.
Yeah, I think the arena scene that we have kind of at the beginning, where I save you for the first time, first of many, as Corio points out several times. I think that was the first scene we had together, right?
Yeah, that was the first
The
scene.
whispering woman in the dark.
The
which
first
is cool.
scene that I shot.
Ever?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
In the movie, yeah.
Yeah,
Which
it might have been, I think it might have been both of our first date.
Yeah, because it was terrifying.
It was terrifying.
It was
and
such
we're
an
in this
emotional scene.
so emotional. You're in like a really dark place psychologically in the scene, and I am like pissed off at having to come and rescue you. And we're in this massive, like, beautiful old hall in Poland, where like we later learned Hitler had like delivered speeches, so it had this kind of like daunting kind of like eeriness to it that I think we all felt while we were in there.
Yeah.
And like the scene is kind of dark and eerie, and it's quiet, and there's threats everywhere. And that was like, it was kind of being thrown in at the deep end, right? I definitely felt it. I felt like we hit the ground running with some like pretty serious stuff, and I actually think it just like, it felt super palpable.
It did.
Yeah.
I completely agree.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Thank
Yeah.
you. And I've just got time for one more.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you, Tom, to what extent do you think Snow is an evil person through and through? I feel like that's something that you grapple with watching the film, so I wonder from your perspective.
I think that is the question of the film, right? It's like, is it nature, is it nurture? Can people be born evil, or do they become evil because the world makes them that way, or they respond to the world in a certain way? Which again is like why I find the character so interesting to play. I think if I had to answer that one way or another, which is hard to do, I don't think I believe one thing, because we're very complex things, humans. I don't think anyone is born evil. I really don't. I think life is tricky and complicated and complex, and this particular character chooses one path that most people wouldn't. And actually, in this film, you get to fall in love with him and then be like heartbroken and devastated when he does the thing that you wouldn't do.